Welcome to the Mike Hewitt Show. My name is Mike Hewitt, and my guest today is Bruce Edward Walker. Bruce is a freelance writer with a clientele such as the Acton Institute for the Study of Religion and Liberty, the Heartland Institution, and the Mackinac Center for Public Policy, and a whole bunch of other ones, including me once upon a time. Bruce, welcome to the Mike Hewitt Show.
Good morning, Mike. It's great to be able to talk to you.
Hey, help me out, help listeners out. Tell us a little bit, what does it mean to be a freelance writer, and what do you do?
Well, as a freelance writer, I sit around my home office or the local cigar shop and think lofty thoughts and send out many, many emails and resumes and what have you, and apply my contacts in the think tank world to for writing ideas. And sometimes it's more of a pull mechanism where someone will come to me and say, we need a op-ed on, say, net neutrality or climate change or something like that. So I have a regular list of publications that I write for, and but I'm always open for more. So,
okay. Plus, you do some editing. Is that correct?
Yes, I've edited several books, and I'm in the middle of working on a book on charter schools right now for another writer. So, yeah, I try to keep busy doing that as well.
Okay, pretty soon you're going to be up to another project from me.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, the first one that Bruce helped me with was America's Final Beginning, and the second one, at least tentatively, is going to be called the Third Founding of America. And
is that a sequel, Mike?
Kind of a sequel, yeah. I would like to think it's a lot better written than my first shot, but even in the first novel, as I wrote through, anyone that reads it can see that the first half was I can only tell you, as you know, writing a book or writing anything that large, wow, what a learning curve that was.
Well, absolutely. And you know, what I used to tell my writing students when I was teaching at University of Detroit is that writing is a muscle, and you have to work it out. You develop that muscle by writing, and then you develop your own style. But the trick is to keep writing, and the fact that you can actually start a novel and actually finish it, Mike, is absolutely amazing. And I thought it was, as they say in the trade, a ripping good yarn. So it was a lot of fun to go through in its preliminary stages.
Yeah, it was just that, a learning experience. I have to tell you, and I don't know that I ever told you before, but I was originally writing a series that had absolutely nothing to do with politics. It was the story. People will roll their eyes, but it was the story of two soulmates that met each other in different lives, and I'd started in a long time ago history, and the book was originally going to be called The Final Beginning, and it was the final beginning for this particular couple. But what happened is that when you did the math, it put me in the future, 2029, and I couldn't control my politics. And so it ended up to be America's Final Beginning, and that's, at any rate, I had a lot of fun writing it. But now, I didn't know you taught. Tell me about that.
Oh, I was adjunct professor at the University of Detroit Mercy for 3 or 4 years back in the early part of the 2000s, and so I taught literature. My degree is in comparative literature and creative writing, so I taught literature on the campus proper, and then also did some work on technical writing with the Ford Training and Development Center through the University of Detroit. It was great fun. It was a heck of a learning experience, and you also learn that a lot of the individuals coming into your classes at the university level actually require a lot of remedial work in just the basics of storytelling and literature. Most people are brought up on television and trying to get through reading and then trying to get through the veil of political correctness when teaching classic literature is extremely difficult.
I can't even imagine. Listen, one of the things I wanted to talk about with you today, Bruce, is when I'm reading your work, I've seen some of your writing on climate change, on on a number of different hot topic political issues going on in our times. And when I look at the whole picture, to me, it looks like a power grab. But when I don't want to be cliche when I say that, because frankly, I'm not even convinced I understand who's doing the power grabbing. And I know that you're a lot more versed in most of these topics than I am, because you write on them frequently. So help me understand: is there a power grab, and if so, who's doing the grabbing?
Well, I have to be a little bit careful here because the moat around my house isn't complete yet, and I need to cut some wood planks for the drawbridge. But government is always in danger, or is always threatening, I should say, to become so big that you can't get it to back off. And I'm not going to pick on one particular political party yet, or one particular administration yet, but I will say that you always have to fear your government growing too big and encroaching too much into your life. Having said that, since we're both classical liberals, Mike, and so we recognize those dangers and that we should always be alert to further encroachments of government. But it just seems to me that since 2009, we have been just recognizing an onslaught of executive orders, of regulatory nightmares, of regulatory takings of property, regulatory control of the internet through the FCC, EPA regulations through Lisa Jackson. And no matter how many times these things are, we roll back that wave, they come back with an even stronger wave. And it's gotten to the point now where you hear the mantra of someone like Harry Reid, who is just going after individuals like the Koch brothers, saying that it's just absolutely horrible that they're putting money in to express their political viewpoints, when he's saying that to his audience while he's in the background collecting money from progressive billionaires.
Sure.
So it's be wary of politicians, because each one of them has a middle initial H, and that stands for hypocrisy.
I thoroughly agree with that. I have to tell you candidly, though, sometimes I wonder if the bureaucracy itself hasn't grown so big that the politicians can't control it anymore. That's one of the things I wrestle with. But to your original point about 2009, I have to tell you, Bruce, I was writing America's Final Beginning, and I was at about the halfway point when President Obama won. And I stopped writing it for about 6 months because I thought, well, my timetable's off. I said 2029, and it's happening right before my eyes. I literally stopped. I just couldn't go forward until I realized that, but maybe I'm right or wrong, I don't know which, but he may be a big bump in the road, but he's just another bump in what I perceive as a symptom of the electorate being very, very lost.
Well, precisely. When you have, there are certain things that the Republican candidate in the last election said that were not entirely incorrect, but he suffered many brickbats for having said them to a group of private fundraisers. And the more people are bought and paid for, the more they want to line their cocoon with unearned monies. And it's gotten to such a point that you worry that clear-headed individuals, clear-headed leaders cannot rise to the forefront to roll back all of these advancements that have been made in government giving.
What kind of amazes me, just a little bit of candor on my own part for a moment, there was a time not that long ago, a few years ago, 04, 05 and back, where if you would have asked me, Mike, what are you? I'm a Republican. I said it without hesitation. And now I'm a like a contained Republican. I vote Republican because I'd be cliche, the lesser of two evils. But even when I look here in Michigan, and I've often joked on this show, I refer to Governor Snyder as O. Snyder. I look at the Republican Party, a third of them, on all of the major issues. And of course, I'll have some establishment friends of mine saying, "Oh, Mike, there were 1,800 votes, and you're mad at two or three." But on those issues, that I'm distraught over, we're not talking about the size or shape of a stop sign or whether there was 61 or 62 point, some billions of dollars. We're talking about generational changing things like Medicaid, the Medicaid expansion. We'll never put that genie back in the bottle. It will increase the cost of health care for everyone as a matter of fact. It's an undeniable fact that it will increase health care costs. Aside from taxation and all of the normal arguments, health care costs are going to go up. And I look at the Republican Party, a third of our leadership in Lansing joining with socialists, frankly. And I think, who's electing these people? And then I remember, it's we the people that are doing that. And that scares the bejeebers out of me, Bruce.
Well, absolutely. And then you have the media playing into it 100-fold, where to such a point that to say that you appreciate the goals of the Tea Party to limit government to the size where you could actually drown it in a bathtub, and small government, low taxes, and you can't read even the smallest town newspapers. I live in a relatively small town, and I read the editorials and take great pleasure in pricking the writers of these op-eds where they're talking about how we need more government, and if you don't believe we need more government, then you're just a mean, evil, nasty person. So the media is playing right into the hands of this and pushing. And I'll say it along with you, a socialist agenda that where government is all and the individual is nothing.
Well, we've taken a very, very successful formula and we're transforming it into a French-style democracy. And when you look at the two historical scopes, what's become of France under that French-style democracy and what became of America under the formula that our founders set up, I think it's a no-brainer as to which one you want in terms of creating opportunity for more people. So if the goal really is to increase the daily lifestyle of the American citizen, I don't believe that that's the goal anymore, which leads me to use terms like power grab. When I look at the Senate Majority Leader in Lansing, a Republican. He ran as a conservative. In fact, most of the state legislators, at least in the House, came to power or won their election in 2010, going from Tea Party to Tea Party, talking about what fiscally conservative people they were. And then I'm seeing them vote for Common Core and Medicaid expansion, and now we're on the verge of seeing a significant rise in minimum wage. The problem with that is that the folks that flip hamburgers that are going to be thrilled with over the $2 raise won't be able to afford the hamburger anymore. It's just such defeating, backwards, upside down thinking that it's so contrary to what these people ran on that you think, wait a minute, it's not like you changed or you had a little bit of a thought process. You learned something new. You bold-faced lied. I don't know. There's no other way of saying it.
Well, yeah, and I think that the move to raise the minimum wage in Michigan is basically a sleight of hand to appease the population that has been polling very heavily towards raising it to over $10 an hour, and to raise it to over $8 an hour should mollify the population that is calling for a rise in the minimum wage.
But Bruce, we know it won't.
You can raise the minimum wage to $8 an hour, and it's not going to do much good if you lose jobs and you're losing the $8 an hour, or you're losing the $7 an hour that you're making currently. So you could take the Congressional Budget Office figures where they say that 900,000 people will be lifted from poverty if the minimum wage is raised to $10.35 an hour. Well, okay, fine. That sounds all well and fine, but they also say that 500,000 people will lose their jobs. So you do the math.
If five,
so how many people are going to be helped? And let's assume that the 900,000 people who would be lifted out of poverty actually want a job.
Right, and the 500,000 people that lose their jobs, two things happen. First off, they become entitled to, they have to accept entitlement from the state.
Yeah,
welfare.
They become wards of the state.
They literally become wards of the state in every sense of the terminology. At the same time, they're no longer contributing. So not only are they no longer contributing to the economy as they would have been, but they become a drag on the economy. Listen, to try to appease the folks that we're talking about the extreme left. We're not talking about your average Democrat you're walking down the street. We're talking about appeasing the very, very left. Those folks, their favorite word is more, and it doesn't matter what we're applying it to. They want more, and if you agree to more today, tomorrow they're going to want more than what you agreed to more today. It's a never-ending cycle. So when people look around and say, how come a gallon of gas used to cost 55 cents and now it costs outrageous monies, is because people keep pushing the economy in that direction. But we're not talking about increasing lifestyles.
No, and seriously, Mike, when you look at the individuals who keep harping on the poor, look at the quality of life that the poor experience now. I am not a wealthy man by any stretch of the imagination, but I enjoy a lifestyle that my predecessors, my ancestors, generations prior to me, never would have known. You look at 60 years ago, less than half of the households in the United States had indoor plumbing, and now the poorest of the poor have cell phones. They have cars. They have air conditioning. It's important that they have food stuff, that they can raise their children, that they have decent, they can afford decent schooling for their children and what have you. But they're doing remarkably better than the poor of even the last 40 years.
So, the progressives that I'm in the middle of crusading against will say that is the result of their effort.
Well, you could look at that in two ways, because their efforts have actually created a permanent underclass, whereas there was far more social mobility 40 years ago than there is today.
I think that's thoroughly true. I've often said that with the safety net comes a very low ceiling. So, here you did not hit rock bottom, but you can never, ever, ever go above this bar on the wall. And I gotta tell you, I'd much rather opportunity than a free meal. I just would.
Yes, absolutely.
It's
we will led hard scrabble lives going through college and early marriage and bringing children into the world and raising them, But some of us required a leg up, be it WIC coupons or going to mom and dad and saying, "Look, can you help us out with rent for next month, or can you help us with a down payment on a vehicle?" There hasn't been a time when some of us have needed a little bit of help. We both appreciate that. Some of us went to the government, some of us went to our families, provided our families could afford it. Sometimes they couldn't afford it, but they still managed to help you out. But to make it a permanent handout system has been just tremendously, like you said previously, a drag on the economy and a drag on the actual will to work.
To me, it makes no sense.
I'm a farm boy, Mike. I grew up on a farm. My father was a pipe fitter at Dow Chemical for 40 years, and we had a farm. So it was the summers was I enjoyed going back to school as a sickly child. I enjoyed going back to school because it meant that I got a break from farm work for 9 months. But we worked all the time, be it for a garden for a family of 10, and the canning that went with it and all of that, plus doing all the farm crops and the cattle that we had. We were always busy.
That's the way it's supposed to be. Bruce, we're going to go to a break, but just to get your thoughts going, when we come back, I'm going to remind you of the old TV series The Waltons and talk a little bit about the American family. Folks, we'll be right back.
Are you one of the many Americans who undergo CPAP or BiPAP therapy? How often are you replacing your masks and hoses? Replacing your CPAP or BiPAP supplies every 3 to 6 months is critical to an effective therapy. Bacteria will build up, making you sick, and worn-out straps cause leaks and are just plain uncomfortable. Let Allied Medical Supply Network help. Call Allied Medical to speak to an expert agent that will determine which supplies you need and will set up a schedule for your fresh, brand-name supplies to be delivered right to your door, right when you need them. Shipping's absolutely free, and you may qualify to receive supplies at little or no cost to you. That's right, there's no driving around town or remembering when to order. Call Allied Medical Supply Network today and rest easy.
Call 800-560-7631. That's 800-560-7631.
Hi, if you ever find yourself arrested in jail and got bail, make sure you call me, Tommy D, at Bad Boys Bail Bonds, 866-728-6400. Because if I can't get you out, you ain't getting out. Hey, have you ever thought about becoming a fugitive recovery agent? And you're not certified, don't know where to turn, don't know what to do or what to expect? Log on to National Academy of Bail Enforcement.com and apply today. Classes are forming soon in Michigan. Tell them Tommy D sent you.
I've made a discovery. The down-home community our grandparents loved is still here. Seriously, that's what you'll find at Renegade River in downtown Spring Lake. You might be looking for a new or used hunting rifle or something for personal defense. Maybe a DNR sport license or fishing supplies, personal and home defense, hunting, Army, Navy supplies, fishing, survival gear, and even a tools and guy stuff consignment department. You'll be greeted by low prices and quick professional service provided by shopkeeper like Hewitt. If you're not in a hurry, grab a cup of coffee and join in the conversation. Renegade River, firearms, hunting, personal protection and survival gear, going camping, or looking for emergency products. Come take advantage of the prices while meeting up with old friends and making new ones. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake, or go to the website renegaderiver.com.
Welcome back to the Mike Hewitt Show. My guest on the line with us today is Bruce Walker. Bruce, when we went to break, I wanted to talk a little bit with you about the Walton family. You know a little bit about the Waltons, don't you?
Oh, well, you know, I wanted to be a writer since I was in second grade. It was the only way I could communicate with my siblings, because at the time I was probably about 95% deaf, and that wasn't rectified until at the end of fourth grade, when surgery kind of relieved all the swelling and the abscesses in my inner ears. So I was finally able to hear. So I was always wanted to be a writer, because it was how I communicated with my 7 siblings and my parents. But the Waltons, I was called Bruce Bob or Bruce Boy because my affinity to writing, and we totally related to that, because if you recall, the Waltons were an FDR family.
Right.
They thought that Roosevelt was just the greatest thing since sliced bread that they got at Godsey's store, and but they were still a self-sustaining, self-sufficient family that did many things that are appealing to the conservative mind, such as the one that I had, even though my parents were fairly liberal, and there were a lot of liberal plot lines in the Waltons. The essence of the show itself was very, very conservative. It was aligned with what Edmund Burke would call the little platoons, or Orestes Brownson wrote in the 19th century about the value of family and community in promoting values, in promoting hard work, and even you can extend that as far as the literature of Wendell Berry, talking about the value of community, the small townships, which is where the majority of the rules, the morals, the values come from. And I think the Waltons did a fairly good job of conveying that. And, aside from my personal affinity to it, because of the same number of children and lots of sisters and what have you, but and hard work all the time builds character.
You asked when we were at break how I knew that you had an affinity for the Waltons, and then you just accidentally stumbled on how I did know. By the way, for those that don't know, one of the characters in the novel that I wrote was President Burke, or Robert Burke, and I actually took his character line from my interpretation of Edmund Burke, who was a classical liberal or from history in the 1700s. Is that the right? The right
1800s, yeah.
Okay,
yes.
But
plus he was Irish, so you got to love him.
There you go. Yeah, but I got to tell you, to the greater point of it, though, is that even today, if you take the average mother, father, Democrat, who considers themselves liberal, if you look at how their lifestyle is and how they raise their kids, they actually still are raising their kids and living in a fairly conservative environment. But what we have changed since the era that the Waltons was supposed to be depicting is the way families in total take care of themselves. So those are listeners and watchers that are not familiar with the Waltons, because that was in the 70s, I believe. And back then they depicted a family where you had grandma and grandpa and the mother and the father and all of the kids were there. So you had very poor times, very trying times in America's history. But families didn't turn around and say, "Okay, government, you owe me, and you owe me, and by the way, you owe me." They huddled together and they weathered the storm and had a pretty good life at doing that. And I think we've traded a lot for the iPads and the iPhones and this paced. You go to a restaurant now, and it's not uncommon at all to see a husband and a wife or an entire family where each one of them are watching something totally different on their phone or their pad, and that's about as far removed from what kept America together through the Depression as you can get.
Well, now, Mike, it sounds to me that you might be just a little judgmental.
Yes, sir.
And that is to be poo-pooed in today's society. The kids like to say, "Don't judge, Don't judge me." When it is part and parcel of humanity to look at someone saying, "You're doing something incorrect, you're doing something wrong, or you're wasting something valuable."
Right.
And the media jumps all over that because it's easier to report on some twerking tween on television than it is to actually report what's happening with our government in Lansing and in D.C. They're full of all these distractions, so that people will get all upset whether Charlie Sheen is going to leave 2.5 Men or Miley Cyrus is going to do a dirty dance on television again. And we seem to not get reported or ignore reports about what's happening with the regulatory agencies in D.C. It's kind of crazy when you look at the loss of the Malaysian flight. It's a tragedy, to be sure, but it also served as a major distraction. So, our our news services are not doing their jobs effectively.
They have a constitutional obligation to inform the electorate.
There's a reason why it was called the Fourth Estate.
Yep. That's exactly right. But they're completely now, I don't know if it's purposefully or if they're really interested and think everybody is interested in her twerking. I have to tell you, I really wrestle with this part of our conversation, because on one hand, it's easy for me to point at the media and say, you're part of the problem. The flip side of that is that the media, whether they want to call themselves extreme left or not, doesn't matter. They're capitalists, and they're knowing that making money is what their goal is. If they weren't, if showing her over and over and over again doing that dance didn't generate them money, they wouldn't do it. If telling people about family values or newsworthy items was actually profitable for them, that's what they do. So I look at the politicians in Lansing and those in Washington and to the media and say, all of you folks, I don't agree with any of you, but you're all symptoms to a far greater and deeper problem.
No, I have to agree with you, Mike. It's just a shame, as far as I'm concerned, that the media offers the politicians cover for their misdeeds, or just for their dithering on a daily basis on the taxpayer dime.
They do offer them cover unless somebody says something that they don't particularly agree with, because it goes back to the word intolerance comes to mind. Those right now in our society that are demanding tolerance are the most intolerant, I think, that we've seen in America in a very long time.
Well, I had this conversation with a buddy just the other night, James Holman from the Mackinac Center. We were enjoying a cigar and a conversation out on my deck.
God, I miss cigars so much, Bruce. I quit smoking 4 years ago, and of all of I don't even miss smoking anymore, but I miss a good cigar.
Well, the conversation just rolled around to, as you were saying, intolerance. And this is something that Jonah Goldberg wrote about several years ago in a book called Liberal Fascism. And if you don't buy lock, stock, and barrel the liberal line on everything, you are vilified to the nth degree. And there is no room for debate, because all these ad hominem attacks will come your way, or other logical fallacies, and you have to. All of these are attempts to not further the debate, but to shut them up.
Absolutely. It's just amazing how they can absolutely destroy a person, and the public is willing to buy right into whatever the storyline is. And let me use the last election cycle as an example, and I'll target the conservatives and classical liberals. And what I'm talking about is that each time we had in the primary, the Republican primary that was 2012, we would get a person that surfaced to be the front runner, and the media would destroy that person, and everybody on the right would nod up and down like Cheshire cats and buy right into whatever the destructive tag and message was. Somebody else, so that person would be kicked to the curb, and another person would rise up as the front runner, and then the media would. It was almost to the point where it was so predictable it became, if not sad, but laughable. Each person that rose to the front would be just annihilated by the media, but the media would have no effect if the people would pay attention to detail and actually become a virtuous and informed society like our founders talked about.
Well, there is I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for right now. Apparently, there's either too much coffee or not enough. But
never too much.
Well, the media, the information services have been somewhat ghettoized in that you gravitate towards that media which responds to your worldview, and some people would say that's a bad thing, and I'm of the mind that in a free market, that's what's going to happen, and so. Yes, there were, let's just take, for example, the person who was probably the most vilified over the past 10 years is probably Sarah Palin, and not necessarily a fan of Governor Palin, but, she is a public figure and deserving of some respect. But some of the harsh, terrible, nasty things that were said about her by so-called feminists, was just enough to stagger the imagination. It's like, but feminists are supposed to say that, are always saying that you shouldn't. I don't know if I can say this on your program, slut shame women who are promiscuous, but here they are insinuating that she is an immoral, her children are promiscuous, saying terrible things about her child with Down syndrome, and I know that political rhetoric has been heated for centuries, but this was something that was just beyond the pale as far as I was concerned. I mean, things that David Letterman said, things that some of those nasty ladies on The View said about her was just unfathomable to me.
Yeah, and the comparison to that is you remember when Trent Lott was being complimentary of the 98-year-old man who was clearly near death. And he lost his leadership position over it because the guy 50 years ago had been part of the Dixiecrats. To me, I'm probably about as opposite as you can get from their position on silencing people. Those folks that I don't agree with, I want to win over the hearts and minds of people in the arena of ideas. I don't want to pound them to death and make them shut up. I want them to come forward and say, let's have the best idea win, whether I necessarily like it or not. The concept, I have to tell you, as a host of a show and as a writer, the concept that we can shut people's ideas down, to me, is equatable to Nazi Germany burning books out in the public square. I see no difference. I find it extremely fearsome when they take a person to score over some words that they said, as if somehow the words were destructive. That's somebody's view. I don't have to endorse it to not want to burn the guy at the stake. Does that make sense, what I'm thinking?
Oh, absolutely. Sandy Ikeda had a wonderful piece on the Foundation for Economic Education website yesterday. And what he was saying is what we should be doing is responding to our opponent's best arguments and ignore their worst arguments, is saying, okay, you know what, you can do better than that. Because then you're just going down an alley that there's of diminishing returns. Deal with our opponent's best arguments instead of looking for the easy victory. The low-hanging fruit, anybody can do that. And it's not commendable for you to say, Robert Byrd, you were a member of the Ku Klux Klan, and so therefore all Democrats are evil people, and had more to do with the holding back of the civil rights movement than anybody else. And these are arguments that go absolutely nowhere because it's all specious. Deal with the specific argument and deal with their best argument. And bring your opponent's game up to your standards instead of reducing your standards to accommodate them.
Yeah, but I have to tell you, I only cite this again because it's a common denominator for you and I, only because of your involvement when I wrote America's Final Beginning. But we're at least socially at this point already in a civil war, in my view. I don't know how else to say it, but the idea of I disagree with you, so let's talk about something else, is very, very foreign now in our current culture. Right now, if I disagree with you, the opponent wants to destroy the person they don't agree with. To me, that's a form of civil war. We can't have a discourse where we agree on three things, but we just disagree on this one item that, and now let's go have a cocktail like Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan. That kind of mentality is really kind of absent. But listen, Bruce, before we get any deeper to this, we're going to go to a break, and when we come back, we'll pick up right there.
Okay.
Attention hip replacement patients. Several metal-on-metal hip implants have been recalled, and a jury recently awarded $8.3 million to one hip replacement victim.
Metal-on-metal hip implants can cause excruciating pain and may require expensive surgery to replace. If you had a metal-on-metal hip replacement and it's been removed or it needs to be removed, call the Goldwater Law Firm right now.
I'm attorney Bob Goldwater. Metal-on-metal hip replacements can be dangerous. If you have a metal-on-metal hip implant, even if it hasn't failed yet, call us right now. You may be entitled to substantial compensation.
The manufacturer of your defective hip implant should have to pay for your medical expenses and your pain and suffering.
Your time to act is quickly running out, so call us right now.
If you have a metal-on-metal hip replacement and it's been removed or is causing you problems,
call 1-800-540-9516. That's 1-800-540-9516.
I've made a discovery. The down-home community our grandparents loved is still here. Seriously, that's what you'll find at Renegade River in downtown Spring Lake. You might be looking for a new or used hunting rifle or something for personal defense. Maybe a DNR sport license or fishing supplies, personal and home defense, hunting, Army, Navy supplies. fishing, survival gear, and even a tools and guy stuff consignment department. You'll be greeted by low prices and quick professional service provided by shopkeeper like Hewitt. If you're not in a hurry, grab a cup of coffee and join in the conversation. Renegade River, firearms, hunting, personal protection and survival gear, going camping, or looking for emergency products. Come take advantage of the prices while meeting up with old friends and making new ones. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake, or go to the website renegaderiver.com.
Hi, if you ever find yourself arrested in jail and got bail, make sure you call me, Tommy D, at Bad Boys Bail Bonds, 866-728-6400. Because if I can't get you out, you ain't getting out. Hey, have you ever thought about becoming a fugitive recovery agent? And you're not certified, don't know where to turn, don't know what to do or what to expect? Log on to National Academy of Bail Enforcement.com and apply today. Classes are forming soon in Michigan. Tell them Tommy D sent you.
Welcome back to the Mike Hewitt Show with my guest, Bruce Walker. Bruce, but what I want to do is spend our last little bit of time, if I can. I want to take us back to the concept of a power grab. I'm really trying to get my head around some of the things that appear to me to have a greater agenda than the obvious. And I may offer you a couple examples, and then if we can, let's chew on it for a few minutes. When I look to things, and I've said this on the show a few times now, but SAT scores. You're an educator, so you'll understand where I'm coming from with this. There's a graph that shows the folks that were born in 1952 scored X on average on an SAT score, and the folks that were born in 53 a little less than that, all the way through to the last I saw it went from 1952 through folks born in 1992. And it's just a graph chart. And the line goes in a 45-degree angle straight down. There was never a time when it plateaued, never a time when it tweaked up a little bit. So in other words, for 40 years, SAT scores have gone down, while our funding has went up at the exact same rate towards education. And I stand back and I look at that, and I think, that can't happen on accident. You can't have consistent 40-year drop in the SAT scores. So I think these folks that are, and I don't mean the average teacher at school, please don't misunderstand me. I don't think that those folks mostly are doing this. I think most of them are in there trying to teach, and they believe what they believe, and that's fine. But when I look at the overall structure and say 40 years of reduction in educational results, that can't happen on accident, but I can't get my head around why. Why would somebody or some buddies want to have that as an outcome? Any thoughts?
Well, I don't know if that's the actual desire. I mean, let's start with believing that the intent of those people was always good, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And if you look at every government program related to public education, has resulted in diminishing returns. And it has been consistent since Eisenhower, and even the conservative hero Ronald Reagan actually said he was going to roll back some of the government education programs and did not.
Couldn't.
And the test scores continue to decline. Bush Sr. tried the same thing. Clinton tried the same thing. No Child Left Behind. Dismal results.
Now we've got rotten core, but
yes.
But when I look at places like Detroit, like Saginaw, Boston, Los Angeles, they've got, depending on the city, all of the major cities in America, not some of them, 100%, all of them have functional illiteracy rates that hover between 30 and 50%. And I go, holy mackerel, let me look at the world and see where else I can find it. And guess where else I find those kind of illiteracy rates? Haiti, just for starters. And I go, Haiti? No kidding. Our major cities, the actual population that lives in our major cities, have reading literacy rates on par with Haiti. That's America? I'm befuddled by that. And by the way, it shows in my second novel. I can't get my head around the notion that our learned people in America are standing back thinking, yeah, we're on the right path now, because we're not.
No, absolutely, we are not. And even if you look at the culture, you see the dumbing down of culture to such an extent that comparing 90% of the novels that are out there now with the great literature of the 20th century is it's a fool's errand.
Very true.
Even if you were to read the short stories in the New Yorker, you're saying, well, the anthologies of New Yorker stories from the mid-20th century were fantastic compared to the dreck that is being put out there right now. The education continues to get worse. As a former university professor, I have to say my students were more interested in
social hour than learning hour?
Well, many of them, I can't say this, but many of them were more interested in, would spend twice as much effort to do half as much work. And by challenging, say, James Baldwin, I used to teach a story called Sonny's Blues by James Baldwin, a wonderful story, and I'm a huge jazz fan. And I would have students who would refuse to read him because he betrayed their race. And I said, that's just intellectually lazy. That's just sloppy.
And it's wrong, but
it's totally wrong. Okay, number one, when we were university students, we would get our syllabus and run to the student union and say, I get to read James Baldwin. I get to read Kafka. And now it's like, Professor Walker, you want us to read what?
Yeah.
You want us to read like a novel and 10 short stories in one semester? Are you kidding me?
Right.
I said, and that used to be a weekend afternoon for guys like you and me, and you would just kind of scratch your head and say, but why?
But listen, it goes to not to stop you, but it goes to social how we're acting as a society. I don't know if you're aware, but I own a gun shop in Spring Lake, and a young man comes into the gun shop, and I can't remember, it was a Friday evening or something like that, but it was 5:30, 6 o'clock, and there's 5 or 6 fellows standing around with cups of coffee, and we're talking about whatever the political drama was at the time, and there was business going on. And it, truthfully, when I look, and I see it all the time, but it does look a little bit Norman Rockwell-ish. But the young man comes in, and he's standing there a little bit in awe for a minute, and I've never met him. I say, hey, you want a cup of coffee? I get him a cup of coffee. Now he's standing there with his mouth kind of half open and a coffee cup in his hand that he's not actually sipping on, and he's watching all these people talk. And he starts to giggle. I said, what's so funny? He said, I've never seen this before. He says, I've heard about it. I've seen it on TV, but I've never seen this kind of. I said, you're looking for the word community, aren't you? I said, it's still here, just waiting for people to come back to it. I think the loss of that, the loss of family, the trades that we've made with some of the technologies that we've been blessed with, I think help whoever the people are that are looking for power grabs.
Well, also, Mike, this is something that you and I discussed off air, is that we have granted certain defaults into the public rhetoric. So you can't talk about certain things because someone might be offended.
Right.
And in this day and age, it has become a badge of honor to be offended by something, to shut down conversation. We can't discuss alternative points of view of, say, James Baldwin, because it offends me that he left Harlem and went to Europe, and thereby abandoning his people. And I actually had a student tell me that, and I tried to explain to her, well, yes, but he was a black man who left Harlem to go to Europe, but was he really abandoning his people in as much as he was going to France, going to Paris? Because not only was he an African American, he was also a homosexual. So he was going someplace where he would be a little bit more accepted. And it wasn't he wasn't leaving the United States because white people weren't accepting him, because the white intellectuals were totally accepting him. He went to Europe because his own people, so to speak, people of color, were very prejudiced against him because he had a same-sex partner. And but having to navigate through these personal peccadillos and these easily offended individuals is it's a nightmare as an educator, but it's also a nightmare in the public forum where we're trying to have conversations where everybody will pick out one thing and say, I'm offended by that.
I gotta tell you, I must be pretty thick-headed or something, because I'm at 53 years old. I don't remember the last time somebody offended me. I don't get offended very easy. Words to me, on one hand, words are you should see Oscars. Words to me are very, very powerful, but your ideas, I'm a Jeffersonian in this regard, and I quote him a lot on this show. The adage where he talks about he doesn't pick my pocket nor skin my knee if you say there's one God or 20. I listen to people on both sides of that debate, by the way, whether it's religion or race or any of that. I just get blown away that someone can be offended by how somebody else feels. Who the heck cares? Let's dust off and move on.
Well, you have your gun shop. I have my cigar shop. So I would go to the cigar shop, and there are individuals of all different types of persuasions, and I've seen people get into shouting matches there. But the hardcore liberals will have conversations with me because I don't get offended. It's like, okay, you know what? If you want to talk to me about religion, I have my own views. But you know what? Go ahead and tell me what you think. If nothing else, it passes the time when you have a cigar in your hand.
You and me are dinosaurs, you know that.
Yeah,
cigar shops and gun shops and talking about liberty and all that silly stuff.
Right, and just being open-minded and listening to other people. Where I had a wonderful conversation about net neutrality with an individual at the cigar shop yesterday, and
Bruce.
He listened to me, and I listened to him. And we agreed to disagree, but at least we had the conversation.
Do me a favor, Bruce.
The arguments were.
Bruce, tell everyone what net neutrality means. What is it?
Net neutrality basically means that it's an open internet for everyone, and that the ISPs cannot regulate the bandwidth that certain individuals might get over another, or they can't raise their rates. So say that you sit around all day downloading movies from Netflix, and poor Oscar is just trying to send kitten photos to his grandmother, and can't do it because there's not enough bandwidth in that area. And the ISP says, well, we can charge you more, Mike, so that you will, because if you charge people more, they'll use less of it, and that will free up bandwidth for Oscar to send his kitten photos.
Yeah. Truth of it is, it's just going to make somebody a lot of money.
Well,
that's the truth of it. And then
the ISPs are the ones that are taking it on the chin in this regard, because they're trying to keep their end users happy, and then you have free riders like Google with YouTube and Netflix, who are free riders. They're chewing up all this bandwidth, and the ISPs are saying, well, look, we would like to go back and charge the content providers a little bit more money, which would get more than likely passed on to the end user. But if you were going to pay $10, $12, $15 a month to have a Netflix account, and they put you on a fast lane as a result thereof, well, you know what? That's how the free market works.
So this show is on YouTube, Bruce, and what you're telling me is that in that arena, if things change that way, it might cost somebody, the ISP server, in this case YouTube, more to be able to have those kind of those videos that people can watch. So what they would end up having to do is probably charge people to get on there to become users. Is that right?
Well, they'd either have to start charging them, or they would have to start charging them more. So yes.
And now you're in favor of that, or are you against that?
Well, I think that the free market should determine that.
Okay.
I don't think that government is in a place to determine what is happening right now when technology is advancing so much that we don't know what the next step in the technology is.
No, right now.
And the fact of the matter is the FCC is run by bureaucrats and attorneys. It's not run by engineers.
Right. Well, that's the truth of all of government. So
yes,
I mean, even the medical folks are not medical folks. But as I understand it right now, aren't the Democrats advancing what you're suggesting you're in favor for, and the Republicans are saying no?
Oh, no.
No?
I am on the conservative free market side on this one, where I think the ISPs should be able to charge Netflix and Google for the bandwidth that their users are chewing up. So basically, I'm saying stick with the status quo. The FCC has been trying to pass net neutrality. They're now in their third iteration, and the first two have been slapped down by federal court as more or less a power grab. The FCC in and of itself doesn't have the authority to put forth such overreaching regulations on the internet.
They do when they're not challenged. Listen, Bruce, I got to stop you. We're down underneath a minute. Tell me a yes or no. Do you think America's going to continue on forever, or are we going to run out of gas?
I guess I'm going to keep my powder dry on that one, Mike, because it depends on what day you ask me and how much coffee I've had. I would like to think that the glass is half full, as my old boss Larry Reed at Mackinac Center used to say.
I got to tell you, when I look around, and listen, I love America, but when I look around, what we're doing, I believe, is unsustainable, and that's why I asked that question. How can folks get a hold of you if they're looking for editing
They can email me at walker.editorial@gmail.com.
And very good. Folks, he does very good work, so if you're looking, I encourage you to contact him. Bruce, listen, I want to have you back on again at some point. I've enjoyed it.
Yes, this has been quite a pleasure. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, no, don't forget, you'll see it on YouTube, and it's going to be on TV tonight, and I will talk to you on Facebook.
All right, terrific. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, folks. See you next week.
Brought to you by Renegade River.
I made a discovery. The down-home community our grandparents loved is still here. Seriously, that's what you'll find at Renegade River in downtown Spring Lake. You might be looking for a new or used hunting rifle or something for personal defense. Maybe a DNR sport license or fishing supplies, personal and home defense, hunting, Army, Navy supplies, fishing, survival gear, and even a tools and guy stuff consignment department. You'll be greeted by low prices and quick professional service provided by shopkeeper like Hewitt. If you're not in a hurry, grab a cup of coffee and join in the conversation. Renegade River, firearms, hunting, personal protection and survival gear, going camping, or looking for emergency products. Come take advantage of the prices while meeting up with old friends and making new ones. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake, or go to the website renegaderiver.com.
Hi, if you ever find yourself arrested in jail and got bail, make sure you call me, Tommy D, at Bad Boys Bail Bonds, 866-728-6400. Because if I can't get you out, you ain't getting out. Hey, have you ever thought about becoming a fugitive recovery agent? And you're not certified, don't know where to turn, don't know what to do or what to expect? Log on to National Academy of Bail Enforcement.com and apply today. Classes are forming soon in Michigan. Tell them Tommy D sent you.
Are you one of the many Americans who undergo CPAP or BiPAP therapy? How often are you replacing your masks and hoses? Replacing your CPAP or BiPAP supplies every 3 to 6 months is critical to an effective therapy. Bacteria will build up, making you sick, and worn-out straps cause leaks and are just plain uncomfortable. Let Allied Medical Supply Network help. Call Allied Medical to speak to an expert agent that will determine which supplies you need and will set up a schedule for your fresh, brand-name supplies to be delivered right to your door, right when you need them. Shipping's absolutely free, and you may qualify to receive supplies at little or no cost to you. That's right, there's no driving around town or remembering when to order. Call Allied Medical Supply Network today and rest easy.
Call 800-560-7631. That's 800-560-7631.